Today is an historic day in the Australian media. It's quite possibly the beginning of the end of broadsheet newspapers. Fairfax is slashing almost 2,000 jobs, closing printing plants and recasting its flagship newspapers, the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, in tabloid format. The scale of the announcement has stoked fears that eventually entire newspapers in Australia could close down, something that's already happened to major publications overseas, especially in the United States. At the same time that Fairfax is reeling from today's move, the billionaire mining magnate Gina Rinehart is building up her stake in the company and wants seats on the board. As Greg Hoy reports, media analysts think she's edging closer to effective control of the company.
I think this is the biggest thing in newspapers for 100 years. This is the end of the golden age of newspapers. The big question, though, is whether it also means the end of the golden age of journalism.
In Melbourne, The Age has been spreading the news since 1854, the Sydney Herald since 1831. But 1.5 centuries of proud tradition was radically upended today when Fairfax announced it would, from March next year, shrink its flagship broadsheets into tabloids, simultaneously slashing 1,900 staff over 3 years. Though it has gradually morphed into a modern media conglomerate, comprising city and regional papers, Fairfax radio network and a long list of online publications, the old newspapers are a big drag on Fairfax's bottom line, and the share price has been languishing.
The drift of classified advertising revenue, an avalanche of losing that revenue from papers like The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald for nearly 20 years. And when they had the monopoly 20 years ago, they thought they were big enough and ugly enough to withstand the assault from online classified. They didn't do anything to encourage it, let alone embrace selling classified advertising online, and somebody took it off them. And they've lost it now, and now they're looking at drastic measures to respond to that because the business model has collapsed.
It's part of the continuing decline, structural decline in newspapers, and the fact that Fairfax is finally facing that in the two cities, Sydney and Melbourne, which has just got over 4 million persons each, they're essentially going to be one newspaper towns. There'll be a struggle between News Corp and Fairfax, which one survives as a single newspaper in those two towns.
Fairfax's historic announcement was published via the internet.
The days of the huge printing plants built for our legacy print classified business are well and truly over. There will be redundancies.
The bad news on restructuring and redundancies was broken to Fairfax editorial staff today by CEO Greg Hywood, who said he would increase the focus on digital publications and even consider ceasing printed publications altogether if their revenues continued to deteriorate.
Today we've heard the company's plan for cutting costs. What we're yet to hear is the company's plan to preserve the quality of the editorial content that these mastheads deliver. These are great mastheads. They're an integral part of the fabric of our democracy, and our concern is to ensure that they continue to deliver quality, independent journalism for the Australian community.
This is a disgraceful act by Fairfax today. They come out in the media, they don't even give their own employees the grace to tell them what they're actually planning on doing. Still now, we don't know. They've had no discussion with us in regards to not come out, tell your own employees that you're going to be putting them out of work by 2014, shutting 2 of the major plants around this country. It is an absolute disgrace. They need a good hard look at themselves.
It's always disappointing when any Australian is losing their job, particularly possibly up to 1,900 here. But the internet will continue its march, and sectors that were profitable previously are going to struggle as the internet cannibalises different parts of the economy. It's not something you can stop, it's not something you can turn back.
Newspaper publishing is an increasingly brutal business. There was a noticeable silence on the cuts today from Fairfax's arch-rival News Limited. But the media grapevine is alive with speculation that Rupert Murdoch's local newspaper arm, the largest in print media in Australia, is soon to announce its own staff cuts and of a similar scale to those announced today by Fairfax.
All the indications are that News Limited is going along a similar path. broadly they have similar commercial pressures with the business model collapsing. The really interesting thing will be whether, having looked at what Fairfax has done, News Limited may try to capture some of the Fairfax market by delaying, going in a similar direction, or not going quite as far in a similar direction in order to get a temporary commercial market advantage.
Rupert Murdoch, aged 81 now, I think, 81, yes, and he's in a position where he wants to drive Fairfax out of business.
There's just as much chance of News Limited being the survivor as of Fairfax being the survivor, but the survivor will be the one who adapts best and most quickly to the internet world.
Looming large over this shock announcement, mining magnate Gina Rinehart's confirmation she now holds 18.7% of Fairfax shares, edging ever closer, many believe, to effective control.
Gina Rinehart will get to 20% of Fairfax. And the trigger point is Kerry Stokes' 22.3% of West Australian newspaper when he got board control of that percentage level. Now, why is she doing it? It's pretty simple. With that extra $47 million, she probably gains, if she changes the federal government at the next federal election, eliminates the mining resource rental tax, eliminates the carbon tax, probably increases the value of her mining assets by billions of dollars. It is astoundingly simple how important it is for Gina Rinehart to get control of Fairfax and help change the federal government.
And she is welcome to be on the board. She is welcome to launch a takeover. She can do any of those things. She can do any of those things because that's the law. That's the law. But what is vital is that the editorial charter is maintained.
Expired.
There was no comment from Gina Rinehart today on whether or not she is seeking editorial influence over Fairfax.